So hello and welcome to a 5-minute spot on Judas Iscariot. Judas was one of the original 12 apostles. His name, Judas, just simply is the Greek form of Judah. And he was one of Jesus' disciples right from the very beginning. Don't confuse his name with other Judas or Judes. Jesus had a brother called Jude. There was another disciple called Judas. Iscariot probably means he came from Kerioth, which is about 15 miles outside Jerusalem. He was probably the only Judean. The rest were all Galileans from the north. He was the southerner, if you like. John tells us that he was the son of Simon Iscariot. So he was the one that was appointed to be the treasurer and ran the finances for the group when they were on the road. It should be noted that he was an active apostle. He was sent out with the others, given the power over demons and power to heal, and as Jesus sent them out on their mission. The first hint of a problem comes before the time when Jesus went up to Jerusalem, when Jesus observed he'd chosen 12, but one of them was a devil who would betray him. When did he actually do it? Well, he didn't betray Jesus until the very end. In the last week, Jesus had come into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. The people had all come out en masse and welcomed him. But it was only a short time after that before he goes to the chief priests and offers to sell Jesus to them for the price of 30 pieces of silver. And that was the price that was normally paid for the price of a slave, written down even in the books of Exodus. At this point, Luke says Satan entered into him. What's meant by that? It is up for grabs. We can discuss that. But all four Gospels recount the story of Judas betraying Jesus. How did he do it? Well, he arranges to take the temple guards and the great crowd of them with swords and clubs and take them to the place where Jesus will be. Earlier in that evening, Judas had been around the Last Supper with Jesus, and Jesus had said that you were the betrayer, and he went out. And he clearly knew where Jesus was going because he found him in the Garden of Gethsemane in the middle of the night. And at that point in time, Jesus is arrested. By the morning, he is being sentenced to death, and by the afternoon, he's actually dead upon the cross. What's interesting is that Judas afterwards takes the money and goes back to the chief priests and throws it back at them, saying he doesn't want the blood money. And he's in absolute torment and grief. They won't take the money back. He goes off and hangs himself. In the book of Acts, Luke tells us that he actually fell and burst open his guts, if you like, spilled his guts literally in this field. And obviously that doesn't happen if you just trip up. He's fallen from a height, and the implication is that he hung himself and then either the rope broke or whatever, but he falls from a height, literally spills his guts and dies. The chief priests actually go out and buy the field called Akeldama, the field of blood, and it becomes a pauper's gravesite for anybody in the future, a field that nobody could use because all the spillage from the potters makes it where nothing can grow. So Akeldama, the field of blood. Of course, now we come to the tough bit, which is why on earth did he do what he did? And, there's 4 probably main theories about it, why he did what he did. The first one runs along the lines that Judas didn't betray Jesus or didn't mean to betray Jesus, that he was doing politics and it all went wrong. That's hard to accept because Jesus said already that one of them was a betrayer, and that clearly pegs it as that answer doesn't work. The second one is that Judas was bad from the beginning. This is a bit more problematic, a bad guy all along, a wolf in sheep's clothing. There's some evidence to suggest that some of that might be right, because John says that Judas maybe never believed. He says Jesus knew from the beginning those who did not believe and who it was who would betray him. So maybe there's an indication there. And there's a further thing too. Jesus said, "I do not choose you, yet one of you is a devil." And lastly, we find in the story where Mary wipes the feet of Jesus and breaks perfume. And John says that money, that Judas said that money could have been given to the poor. And John adds, Judas didn't care about the poor, but he was a thief. Having been put in charge of the money bag, he'd helped himself to what was put in it. So that idea is Judas was evil all along, but it's problematic again, because why would Jesus choose Judas to be in his inner circle for 3 years? Why would he give him responsibility over the money bag? Why would he give him power and authority to drive out demons, to cure diseases? And that's the biggest one that I find problematic, because you can't use Satan to kick out Satan. Jesus has already established that when he was accused of doing that himself. So it's a difficult one. The third possible reason is that, Satan entered Judas, and the early Christian church used to teach this. The belief that he's a legitimate follower and suddenly falls under the influence of Satan. But again, that doesn't really hang close, because Jesus had already identified him as a betrayer. And then, at the end of the day, he's penitent. He regrets doing what he did. The last answer is that maybe Judas tried to force Jesus to do something. Maybe he tried to force him to come into power. He's come into Jerusalem on a donkey. The people have all greeted him. He's the king of the Jews. But instead of seizing power from Rome, instead he's humble and clearly doesn't do what Judas wants. So could that be it? Could it be that Judas tried to force his hand? Who knows? It's very difficult. There's a couple of things just I want to say before we finish. This idea of the terrible mistake that Judas did, I don't think it's very credible either. None of these things really convince me. But just so that you're aware, in 2006 there was a document found called the Gospel of Judas. Now, it was written hundreds of years after Jesus. Don't make that mistake. National Geographic did a huge amount on it, and it created all sorts of discussions. But it's not an original, it's hundreds of years after the death of Jesus. But it tries to make that point. What does it mean for us? I think there's only one thing I can say. My concern is not whether God's on my side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for only God is right. Whatever motivated Judas, he got it wrong and paid the most terrible price for it. Thank you.